folks a minute or two. We'll give folks a minute or two to get on, but thank you for joining us. We'll get started in just a moment. Welcome, everyone. We're just waiting for some more folks to come on. We'll give them another 30 seconds. Okay, I think we can just about get started, at least with some introductions. Okay, so hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name is Carolina Echenique. The rest of us will do some introductions in a moment, but we're here to talk a little bit about starting your college search process as you wind down what is probably your junior year and get ready for this summer as you start to think about how you might start to explore colleges from afar, maybe in person if you have the chance, and what kinds of things you might be looking out for. Before anything, maybe we'll just all introduce ourselves. So my name is Carolina Echenique. I work over at Williams College. Pass it over to Mandy.
And I'm Mandy Hart, she, her pronouns, and I'm an associate dean at Amherst College.
Hi folks, thanks for your morning, afternoon, or evening. My name is Jackie. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm here at Bowdoin College.
Hi friends, my name is Remy. I also use she, her pronouns, and I'm here representing Carleton College.
Hello friends, my name is Colby Stallings, he, him, his pronouns, and I am representing Pomona College.
Hello everyone, my name is Windsor Jordan, he, him pronouns, and I'm here from Swarthmore College.
Okay, so we're here together as the 6 colleges. The 6 of us as small liberal arts colleges have a number of things in common that I think we'll talk a little bit about over the course of the presentation, but that's some of the rationale for why we do these sessions together. We hope that you'll be able to learn about what it means to go to a liberal arts college, what kinds of things you might look for, and how that process generally works. We won't really talk specifically about our institutions. This is really meant to be more generally informational for institutions like ours, but we hope maybe that some of our schools will pique your interest and it'll be part of your own search process. So with that, I think we can get started on the next slide. So who are we? We are a bunch of admission officers, but what does that really mean? Basically, admission offices are made up of staff members like us who are experts on our own institutions, on the admission process, and on national trends related to higher education and college admission. So each of us is familiar with the broader field of college admission, what it means to read an application, what it means to help a student get from the point of application to admission. And we're also really familiar with particular regions and regional quirks and things like that. Every region, every state is going to have a little bit of a different maybe specialty or a different set of qualities that we get to know really, really well. That make us experts so that when it comes time to read applications, we're really familiar with the schools and the places that students are applying from and are hopefully able to bring that familiarity to the process and have a fuller conversation about the student and the context that they're coming from. So that's who we are, and we'll spend some time talking about some of the different things that you might want to do this summer to start thinking about your college search process.
Hello everyone again, and your college search process often starts with a search to find your right fit. And that word fit is often it feels like an amorphous word. You might hear it from admissions officers like ourselves. You might hear it from your college, high school counselors. But finding your fit is really about thinking about yourself and what you need as a learner in your social environment, what you're looking forward to in college, and finding a college that meets those needs. And there's a few different ways you can go about finding your right fit for your college. So colleges offer a number of different ways right now to do that, to help you find your fit. All these colleges here, many around the country, are offering lots of virtual opportunities. So oftentimes we're going to encourage you to find colleges outside your comfort zone, maybe outside of your state, and maybe you don't have the funds to travel to that place. So we have lots of virtual opportunities, whether it's webinars like this or opportunities for online tours, information sessions. Those are all different ways you're going to find that colleges are trying to connect with you in that virtual space. You don't have to travel to a college to get to know it. All of the colleges here and many around the country offer fly-in programs as well. And these are opportunities that we're going to pay for your flight, your train ride, your trip to our campuses to come check us out for an overnight stay usually. And all our colleges here either have our fly-in applications open right now for folks who are going to be seniors in the fall or going to be open soon. And that'll give you an opportunity to come see our colleges and other colleges around the country for free. So keep an eye out for those fly-in opportunities. They're a great way to kick the tires and see if a college is the right person, opportunity for you. Tours, information sessions, these are all great ways you can get on campus to see if a college is going to be the right fit for you. And one of the questions you want to be reflecting on and thinking about as you go through this search process is thinking about what are you looking for in your college, what type of experiences are you looking to have. So oftentimes that means looking for a supportive community. Where are you going to find that support? So maybe you're a first generation student. Are there other first generation students on that campus? Or there's a center that's going to support first generation students. Maybe you're a low income student. What resources are at the schools that are going to support you as a low income student, right? How do folks afford books on that campus? How do they afford opportunities to go abroad? And where are you going to find folks who share your experience, right? Maybe you're a student of color, maybe you're coming from a rural environment. All those questions about your identity are coming to bear on this question of what type of support you're looking for, and where you're going to find those opportunities within the college and outside the college. So the fit question is going to answer some of those things as you begin your search. There's also lots of other places you're going to find resources to get to know a college as well. College newspapers, lots of colleges around the country have newspapers where you're going to get a chance to see what students are talking about and engaging with. You have access to those things right now, so you can hear student voices. Lots of colleges will give you access to current students, so you can hear directly from the students who are experiencing that college to see if it's going to be a good fit for you. Connecting with faculty, right? Getting to know the faculty on a campus, emailing them, finding faculty who maybe shared your academic interest and getting in touch with them. And then where are your support centers on campus? Again, where are you going to find folks who maybe share your experience and where you're going to find that support that you need to help you be successful. You all have been successful high school students. And so what are the ways you've been supported in high school? And where are those similar or even other opportunities that you're going to find at your colleges to make sure you're going to be successful there as well? Next slide, please. The other part of the search, the other part of the fit process is finding your financial fit. So a couple things to know about how you want to go about doing this and thinking about the cost of college, right? So there's one way to fit is finding the right academic fit. Do the colleges have the right programs you need to be successful and do what you want to do? Does it have the right social environments for you to be successful and do what you want to do? And then is that college going to be a good financial fit for you? So you want to be thinking about the cost of the institution that you're applying to, what that means for your family. Some schools offer need-based aid. Some schools are going to offer merit-based aid. Need-based aid is based on how much money you need to make it possible for you to attend that college. So it's not based on a test score or an exam. It's looking at the free application of federal student aid or the CSS profile to determine how much your family can afford to spend on college, and then providing that need, the money you need to make it possible for you to attend the college. Some schools offer merit-based aid, and merit-based aid is going to be based on things like test scores or exams based on your academic, oftentimes your academic prowess. So you want to pay attention to these type of definitions and these type of things as we're trying to find your financial fit. Certainly, if you're a low income student, you want to be paying attention to schools who offer need-based aid to make sure you get the support you need as well. There's other costs that might come about too once you get on campus. We often refer to these as hidden costs. And so how are books going to be paid for? Maybe you want to be an art student. How are you going to pay for your art supplies once you get on campus? Maybe there's events or speakers you want to go to as well. how are those paid for on the campus? And so it's not just the cost of tuition, cost of classes, room, the cost of your dorm room or board, the cost of your meal. It's also what cost might be there on campus. So all our schools try to make it possible for those hidden costs to be diminished once you get on our campus, to make sure you can access all the academic and social opportunities that our college just offer. If you're curious about what they're helping you find your financial aid, there's a couple tools you can use. All our colleges and all colleges around the country, most colleges around the country have a net price calculator. These are tools that are offered right on our college websites. You can get a ballpark sense of what your financial aid package might look like from our institutions or other institutions around the country. Tools like My Intuition, another tool you can use to go get a ballpark sense of what your financial aid package might look like from colleges like ours and others around the country. So you can get some of those questions answered about your financial fit right from our websites as well.
Wonderful. Thanks, Windsor. So once you've found your fit and you're ready to apply to college, how do you do that, right? What is the actual steps in applying? Where are the applications listed? I'm gonna start backwards with the institution-specific applications. So some colleges, you can go directly to their website and they'll have a button that says apply now, and you may be able to follow that and you can apply directly through that college's website. Other schools may not have a possibility or the option to apply directly from their website. So you'll have to go through some other applications. So one would be the common application, which is like the big one that everyone knows about. So the common application has over 900 colleges that are listed through that application, many and most within the United States and some outside of the United States as well. So they're a great website to start looking at different colleges and start making your list from there. You can filter by state, by region, by if the school that you're looking for, if you're looking for historically Black college, if you're looking for a Hispanic serving institution, different things like that. They have a great filter for that. There's the coalition application, and they're a great resource to start looking if you're a 9th grader, 10th grader, how to apply to colleges. There's over 150 colleges listed on their application. And then last but not least, there's the QuestBridge application. There's 48 partner schools. All of us here at the 6 colleges, you can apply through QuestBridge. Their applications really catered to low income students. So if you identify as low income, if you know financial aid is going to be a big consideration for you and your family, for you to attend college, they may be a great application for you to fill out. There's a scholarship component to that application where you can get a full ride scholarship if you go through the match process through QuestBridge. So those are a few options. There's many more that we haven't listed if you are looking to attend college outside the United States, and there's a few other options, but these options will get you started once you kind of are through that process. Things to consider, the costs of applying to college can sometimes be a barrier for students to apply to many colleges. Sometimes an application fee just to apply could be $35, $50, $60, up to $100, I think is the highest I've seen for some colleges. We want to make you all aware that many colleges, these websites including offer fee waivers. So if you get a fee waiver, sometimes depending on the application you're going through, you can apply up to 10 different colleges all for free if you do get a fee waiver. So you can find those fee waivers directly on like the Common App website. If you go to our website and you type in our little search bar, fee waiver, many colleges and universities also have their fee waivers listed on their website. So when you do apply, you can get a code and you don't have to worry about that application fee being a barrier from you applying. Another thing to consider through these applications, you're going to have some essays and some short answers where colleges are asking you different questions specifically about their school, specifically things about their core value. And some of those essay prompts within these application types may differ as well. So when you're doing your research and you're trying to figure out which application might be the best fit for you, some of these are longer, shorter than each other. You can also look at the essay prompts to determine, what actually speaks to you the most. I will say, as all of us working in admissions, that we don't favor a specific application over each other, or specific essay prompts. Whatever you feel best fits your journey and what you want to share about yourself to us as admission counselors, then choose those essays and maybe choose that application instead. And then a big thing is a lot of colleges, they may overlap depending on who you are looking at, right? So if you're looking at QuestBridge partner schools, all of us are QB, again, partner schools, and you do identify with those questions and you're a low income student, there might be some overlap and that might make more sense for you to apply to. And that's the application platform process.
All right, so we're going to walk through some tips for how you can best represent yourself in an application. Admissions officers are kind of known for "it depends" as an answer because much of it does. But if you ask any admissions officer at any school across the country, is it important to be authentic in your application? That is one thing we can all agree on. And when students ask us, how can I put my best foot forward? How can I represent my best self? Authenticity is 100% the route to go. And we're going to try to break this into categories because you'll notice as you start filling out apps, we'll ask you a lot of questions in a lot of different ways, right? And not all of those will be directed at you. Some are directed at your counselors, some are directed at your teachers, faith leaders, coaches, things like that. So first and foremost, in your activities section, we very much want to know how you spend your time, right? So rather than thinking about this as a resume or an activities list or an extracurriculars list, tell us how you spend your time, right? And tell us the things that are most meaningful to you in terms of time commitment. Certainly, this can take the form of, band, sports, things like that, right? Clubs at school. It can also be things like a part-time job, right? Paid or unpaid. It can take the form of religious involvement, right? And faith-based involvement. It can take the form of helping out at home in a pretty significant way, right? We are not looking to build some sort of extracurricular hierarchy, right? And place value on this activity is more important than this one. Certainly, it is amazing that a lot of you will bring leadership positions, that you will bring awards. That is fantastic. If you are not that student, that is okay, right? Like, we are not simply looking to offer admission to students who have a large list of activities and leadership positions. If that's you, again, lovely. But we are not looking to place value on your activities. We're just looking to round you out as a student, right? And the reality is you spend more time away from class than you do in class. So that list is really important as we try to get to know you as a person. In terms of your essay or your personal statement, let me pause and just say, it's misleading that we sort of always talk about the essay as a sort of singular experience, right? We always talk about the college essay as if there's one. There's not. There's going to be lots, probably. So as you try to budget your time and start thinking forward to this application process, please factor that in, right? If you're filling out different types of applications, there are probably going to be multiple essays, right? Or personal statements, depending on what you want to call them. As you start filling out applications for scholarships, there are going to be more essays that you have to complete, right? So please, please, please keep that in mind. I would encourage you to pick a topic you care about. The mistake that many students make is they pick a topic that they think we want to read about. And the reality is we don't care what you write about, right? Like we care, right? But we don't have a preference, right? In terms of your topic, right? The sort of very scholarly academic writing for some of you, that will work great. And that is what you are jazzed about. And that's what you're great at writing. You should absolutely submit that, right? If you're the student who is like silly and casual and you want to be a little bit funny in your application, that's okay too, right? We're not looking, again, to sort of place hierarchy on the topics that are submitted. And I cringe a little bit every year because New York Times always publishes an article, right? I'm the student who gets into every single Ivy and here's how they did it. Here's their essay, right? And this is not to take anything away from those students. I'm sure the essays are amazing, but they were probably a really good fit for that student or those students. They may not be the best fit for you, right? So take a step back and think about what is either exciting to you, what you care most about, what takes up a significant part of your life, what means a lot to you, what represents a huge part of what you do every day. If you don't care about what you're writing and you can't feel anything as you're writing it, we can often tell that as we read it, right? We can feel sometimes when there's a disconnect. we're looking oftentimes at your writing ability, but again, we're also looking to round you out as a human, right? It's really important to think about yourself as a human in this process, not just a student. Because if we were just looking at you as a student, we would probably only ask for things that were sort of numeric, right? Give us your GPA, give us your number of advanced courses, give us your test scores, right? And give us a graded assignment, right? So we can see how well you did. Yes, it is important that you set yourself up for academic success here. But when we talk about a holistic review process, there's so much more than the numbers, right? Affiliated with you as a human. And this is a great place for you to tell us more about you. In your supplements, and there probably will be many, I would encourage you, make them as school specific as possible. One mistake we see a lot is that students answer the wrong question, right? Oftentimes, colleges will ask a question that says, why are you interested in Swarthmore College, right? What do you like about Williams, right? What lights you up when you think of Pomona College, right? And students will answer and say, I love the small class sizes. I love, the chance to work with professors. I love the research opportunities, all these great things, right? And this is not like, those are right answers. They're not incorrect answers, but sometimes they can be pretty broad, right? And you could replace Williams, Swarthmore, Pomona, Carleton with lots of other college names, and those statements will still work, right? Again, it's not inaccurate or incorrect information, but sometimes if you can offer a little bit more specificity, that can be super helpful, right? Very often I'll talk to students about this process being sort of a two-way courtship, right? I sound so old when I use that term, right? In terms of this sort of college dance that we're doing. Think about the time that we spent chatting with you all, right? There's a reason admissions officers come and stand in your hallways and stand in your lunchrooms and do college fairs, right? Behind our little table with all our materials, right? There's a reason we fill your email inboxes, right? With our communications. There's a reason we send you stuff in the mail. We are very much trying to get you excited about what we have to offer, right? It is our way to sort of woo you as a student and say, hey, we think this would be a great match. Please consider us. The supplement is a really great place to woo us back, right? To say, you know what? I love small liberal arts colleges. I love small classes, all these things. But you know what, Williams? There's something really special about your campus. And here's what I feel when I'm there, or when I look at your website, or when I talk to your admissions officers, right? If you can think about how you feel, or something that sort of distinguishes a college for you, right? When compared to similar institutions, that can be a really helpful way to start. The other thing I'd really encourage you to do is start keeping, you can call it a journal, you can call it notes, you can call it a log, whatever. As you start interacting more with our colleges, spend a few minutes, just jot down some notes after every virtual presentation you see, after every phone call from an admissions officer. If you're lucky enough to tour in person, just jot some notes. Here's what I liked, here's what I didn't like, right? That's going to be very helpful to you 6 months from now when we ask you, hey, why are you applying to Carleton? And you're like, right? Those notes might be super helpful in terms of the specificity of those supplements. Looking at your letters of recommendation, oftentimes we encourage students to choose teachers from different core classes, right? When I say core, I mean the courses that you're required to take, right? The maths, the English, the science, the social science, sometimes the foreign language, right? Let me be clear, we don't despise art, we don't despise Phi Ed, we don't despise music, anything like that. But oftentimes we're looking for teachers to be able to reflect on some of your academic leanings, right? Or your academic personality in some ways, your academic abilities, right? We understand that COVID has made things different for all of you, right? So the teachers that you choose to approach might look different, right, than the students 3 or 4 years ago. That is okay. At the end of the day, you should pick folks that you feel can write you the strongest letter of recommendation. You should also know these don't need to be teachers in areas where you plan to major. They don't need to be teachers who teach courses where you nailed it, right? If you got an A, that's great. Like that's probably a great option. But you know what? If you worked your tail off and the best you could do was a C+ in that physics course, and that teacher has nothing but great things to say about your work ethic and your perseverance and your willingness to ask questions and engage, even when you struggled with course material, that makes for a pretty darn compelling letter of recommendation too, right? So please don't limit yourself thinking, oh gosh, I want to be a bio major. It's got to be my biology teacher and I've got to find a second science teacher. No, absolutely not, right? Especially when you're talking to folks who represent liberal arts. Even if you tell us you're jazzed about bio, we're going to smile and say, sure you are, right? And we'll shake your hand as a religion major in 3 years, right? So we'll see. But bottom line, pick teachers that can write strong things on your behalf, right? If you have the ability Equip them the best that you possibly can to write those letters. Approach them early, right? Because if they're your favorite teacher, I promise they're the favorite teacher of 24 other students, and teachers are underpaid and they're busy, right? Also, give them something akin to a resume. It doesn't need to be anything fancy or crazy professional, but even just a list of things that you do outside of class, or things that are important to you, colleges that you're considering, things that you're thinking about majoring in, things that you're looking for in college. Sometimes teachers see you for an hour during the school day and they have no idea what you do the other 23 hours of the day, right? They're like, oh, I know the student is amazing in my class for an hour, but they have no idea, right? That you're captain of the tennis team, or that you do volunteer work, or that you work 25 hours a week, or that you help out a ton at home. They don't know these things, right? And they can write a better letter on your behalf if they know, okay? In terms of additional information, please use that section if it will be helpful to you. And I want to be both broad and direct in that statement. You should not feel the need to fill in those sections if you don't really need them, right? Just because you see some prompts, right, with empty space that you can type in, you don't need to type there. However, if you can offer anything that will help us to better contextualize your academic and personal experience over the last 4 years, please, please, please utilize that. And let me give you an example. As a senior in high school, when I applied to colleges, I had something like 35 or 40 unexcused and unexplained absences. And that's a lot over the course of a school year. And there were reasons, right? Like my mom was a single parent and I had a very young sibling, and we couldn't afford a babysitter, right? So like when he needed someone to watch him, it was Remy. So there was a reason. I wasn't just ditching school, but I didn't know any better. I did not know enough to tell colleges, hey, here's why I'm missing classes. It's not because I want to. I love being in school. There are things that are bigger than calc class right now that I need to take care of, right? So if you can help us to contextualize, right? And some examples of that, again, if you're missing school, if you drop a ton of activities, if you just choose to drop a lot, that's okay, right? Like we get it. You're living in COVID, right? So you don't need to feel the need to explain things that are taking these huge tolls on your mental health. We understand this is a challenging time, right? But if there are circumstances that are forcing your hand in these areas, it can be super helpful for us to know those things, right? If you had to take a job to help out at home, that can be really helpful for us to know, right? So anything you can do to help us understand, if you think we're going to ask questions, right, in grade trends, in activity trends, anything like that, please do so. And finally, in terms of interviews, I would encourage all of you to consider them. And I know that is a really scary thing for some of you to hear, because some of you are thinking, I don't do well with people, I'm shy, I'm nervous, are they going to like me? I don't know what to say, they're going to quiz me. We very much offer interviews, many of us, not every college, but many of us, because we want to get to know you better, right? Like there's a broader theme to this slide, and it's that we want to get to know you, right? And oftentimes students feel that they are not enough, right? In this process where we value so many different things, so many of you are blessed with an outrageous amount of humility, right? Where you don't know how amazing you are. And that's all that we want to see, like you as you, right? So we want to see you putting your best foot forward in an application that you spend time on, and that you've done a great job. It's well manicured, terrific. But we also just want to see you as you, right? Just chilling with us on a couple of chairs over a cup of coffee, right? For half an hour, just talking about what you want to do in college, right? Or what you're most excited about academically, or in terms of extracurriculars, right? It's also a really great way to get a stronger beat on an institution beyond our well-manicured websites and publications, right? So again, I know it can be nerve-wracking, but I really would encourage you to consider it. I want to be very clear, they are not just for extroverts. So if you are someone who is a little bit quieter or a little bit more shy, that is okay. We want to chat with you too.
Great advice as always from Remy. So we want to talk now about choosing an application round. And an application round is something that can sound a little bit confusing. Like, what even is an application round? Let's say you're going through this whole process and you feel like you found a good fit in an institution. You've thought about what you want to put in an application to represent your best self, and you go on to Swarthmore's website because you're really excited about it to decide what deadline do I need to follow here? And you might go on and see, hey, hey, there's actually a couple of deadlines that I can apply during. And what that really means is that there's different ways that you can apply. And those are called rounds. So let's go through those common rounds that you're going to see and what they mean. So the first round that you'll usually run into, because it's usually the earliest time that you can apply, is through something called early decision. And we as colleges and universities have pretty much agreed that anytime we're using the terminology early decision, it's going to mean the same thing, because it's kind of a serious thing. It is what we call binding. And that means that if you decide to apply in an early decision round and you are admitted, you're saying to that institution, I am going to attend if I'm admitted. So binding means you're making an agreement. As I mentioned, it's serious. We actually ask that when you apply in an early decision round, you sign a document, your parents sign the document, or your guardian and your school counselor signed that document, just so we know everyone's on the same page that if you are admitted, you're planning to attend this institution. So in these different categories, you'll see green highlights and red highlights. The green highlights mean things that are really great about applying in these rounds, and the red things might be some potential drawbacks. So if you apply in an early decision round, you're done with the process early if you're admitted. So usually this process has deadlines, generally speaking, in November, and you generally speaking will hear back from the institution before the end of December, sometimes in the beginning of December. So if you're admitted, you get the whole rest of your senior year to know, here's where I'm going to college, and to be really excited. Definitely not to take the rest of the year off, because we are going to be looking at the remainder of your senior year grades. But it feels like a little bit of a relief to know that you have a plan for where you're going to attend college in December of your senior year. Many times you'll see that colleges have higher admit rates during early decision rounds. Now, I want to offer a little bit of a word of caution about this. This doesn't mean that the review process is any different in early decision rounds. It just means that sometimes our rounds are smaller. We definitely have reasons why we want to admit students who have applied in the early decision round. And so sometimes you'll see those admission rates are a little bit higher for students who have applied in that early decision round. There are some potential drawbacks. One is that you're not able to compare many different financial aid packages. So again, if you apply in an early decision round, you are saying that if you are admitted, you will attend. And that's where the net price calculator that we mentioned before is going to be really, really critical. If you decide to apply early decision to an institution, you want to have done the net price calculator so that you know what you can expect in terms of financial aid from that institution, because you're not able to compare many institutions. It also means that you have to decide relatively early on, right? So if the deadlines are in November, you basically have to know in November that you really love this institution. So it requires that a little bit more of that early research to apply in an early decision round. The next round that you might see is something called early action. Early action is quite a common deadline that you might see. And there's another kind of subcategory that we'll talk about, which is restrictive early action. But just let's talk about early action for 1 second. Early action is you get to apply early, but it's not a binding deadline. So you're not saying, if I'm admitted, I will attend. And there's some great benefits to that. Again, you get your decision earlier. Usually these deadlines are again in the fall, so November or maybe December. And usually the decisions come back maybe 4 weeks after the deadline that you apply during. One great benefit of applying an early action, and this is true for early decision as well in many cases, is that if you're not admitted, you may have the opportunity to be reconsidered in a later application round. And that we call that being deferred. So your application may be considered again, even if you're not admitted in that early round. And that's an opportunity for you to submit some updates to us, new grades, maybe some new awards that you may have won, or if you feel so inclined, you can get maybe an additional letter of recommendation, something like that that can add to your file when we reconsider it in a later round. So there's something called restrictive early action as well. And restrictive early action might actually ask you to limit the number of institutions that you're applying to in an early round. So there may be some qualifications basically to say, we're really excited that you're applying early in our early action round, but we're going to restrict the applications that you send to other institutions, but it's still not binding. So you still have the opportunity to decide later if you'd actually like to attend that institution. Again, this is an early round, right? So early action, it's an early round. It means that you do have to make that decision about, I really want to apply to this institution, before the end of your fall semester of your senior year, and usually right around the middle of your fall senior year. Now, the more common way to apply, especially at small liberal arts colleges like the ones that you're visiting with right now, is through regular decision. And that's just the regular time, the regular round. There's no qualifications, there's no restrictions, it's not binding, and it's a little bit later in the process. So for most of us, that's going to be a January deadline, but probably it's going to be an early January. Again, you want to really solidify your college list by the end of the fall of your senior year so that you know where you're going to be sending your applications. There are some institutions that have regular deadlines, through February and into March, but certainly more selective institutions like the ones that are here, that might be in January. So you definitely want to keep your eye on when those deadlines are. Great benefit of applying regular decision. You have the option to compare all the financial aid packages and awards from all of the institutions that you're admitted to. Again, you've got a little bit more time to search and to solidify and finalize your applications in the way that Remy just talked about. One downside is that the regular decision timeline generally takes a little bit longer. So it can be a couple of months before you receive your decision back. So sometimes you're going to be submitting your regular decision applications in early January and maybe not here until the middle or late in March, or in some cases even at the very beginning of April. So a couple of months, right, after you submit that regular decision application. And it, in some cases, again, can mean that round is a little bit more competitive just because we have so many students applying in those rounds. So they tend to be, again, the largest application rounds where students are applying. So it can be a little bit more competitive. So there's definitely benefits and potential drawbacks to all of the different applications rounds that you'll see. But we wanted to explain what these rounds are because, again, when you get to the point in time when you're doing your research and deciding when to apply, this terminology is stuff that's going to come up for you when you're determining when to apply to different institutions. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of context as you think about where you might apply.
Okay, thank you. So at this point, we have talked about what it means to put together a college list, how you explore the different colleges, how you figure out what those colleges offer and how that relates to your interests, what you actually put in an application and when you might submit it. So at this point, you might wonder what happens to your application once it gets submitted. Where does it go? And what happens at that point? So as we mentioned at the beginning of the session, each of us, we're all admission officers at our institutions, which means that we spend several months out of the year just reading the applications that students send us. And we read basically every piece that you send us because every piece is important to what we call our holistic review of an application. What that means is that we're trying to get a sense of who you are as a full person, not just as a student, not just as a community member, but as a full person, what you have accomplished within your current context and what you might bring to our institutions and what you might get out of them. And so we spend time with every material that you submit, making sure that we understand what you have accomplished within your context, what was available to you, and what that means. And then also trying to think about what you might bring to our institution, what you might actually do once you're here. We're reading again the application cover to cover. We ask for all of those pieces of information because we use them as part of our review. And so it's up to you to be thoughtful about what it is that you want to include, what pieces of the application or what pieces of yourself you want to make sure that you share with us. There are two different parts to that holistic review. There's the process of reading applications, which is what we might call evaluation, where admission officers, again, spend several months just reading what you send us, again, cover to cover. And then we have the process of selection, where numerous admission officers from each institution will come together in an admission committee to, again, review your entire application, have a conversation about your candidacy, and determine the students that they want to include in that community. So these are two separate pieces of the same process that altogether give us multiple opportunities to read your entire application, read all of the work that you put into your application, and again, get a sense of who you are within your specific context, and how you've presented that in your application. The other thing I'll say really quickly, because I've said this now a few times, we are evaluating each applicant individually. We're not making comparisons applicant to applicant. We really want to get a sense of who you are and what you've accomplished within your setting. And we're never going to say, well, this student here did XYZ thing, but this other student in a totally different context did this other thing. We're never doing that kind of comparison. We really want to understand, again, who you are within your setting and what that would mean for our community. So that's generally when you hear holistic review, which I think you'll hear from a lot of institutions, not just ours. This is a really common practice. It generally means that process of reviewing every piece of the application, not just the academic, but the academic and the personal and the comments from your teachers and your counselor and any other additional materials that you provide to get a sense of all of these pieces of yourself that you would bring to our campus. And then one more thing really quickly, each of our campuses is a residential community. Of course, you're going to class. That's a really big part of your experience there. But you also live in the dorms. You also engage in all sorts of activities and other things on campus. And so when we're talking about that holistic review, we're looking for people who are going to be, of course, good students, but also good community members who are going to engage in any number of different ways on campus.
Incredible. Just so that you all have a heads up, this is our second to last slide. So if you do have questions, keep them coming in the Q&A box, and we'll save some to talk about when we're finished with our slides, but also we've been answering them as they've been coming in. They've been great questions, so continue to drop those in there. We covered a lot of these early on in the presentation, but many of them bear repeating because you are in, let's call it an anxiety-filled stage of your life if you're just starting your college application and you're thinking about what to do. So a lot of these we've talked about, but I want to make sure that we drive them home because they are these small things throughout the process that can make your life feel easier, especially because right now it's May. So for those of you who are rising seniors, you're still early on in the process. As Remy said earlier, make sure that you ask for recommendations early, and please be generous to your teachers. That definitely bears repeating. We're just going to repeat it over and over again. Be kind to your teachers, be kind to your school counselors, give them the materials that they ask for, write them thank you notes when they write your recommendations, and just make sure that they have all of the information that they need to write you as compelling a recommendation as possible. Authenticity is absolutely the best thing to put into your application. You've heard that throughout this evening, I hope, is that what we're looking for is for you to represent yourself in your application. No more, no less. Some of you are like, easy for you to say, which is totally fair. But your application just tells us how you've spent these last few years. I always say that applications tell admissions officers two things. They answer two questions for us when we get through those evaluation selection processes that Carolina just talked about. One, can you be academically successful here? And two, if so, what kind of roommate will you be? All of us have these really small, intimate residential communities, and authenticity is the best thing for you to put in your application for us to see how you contribute to our incoming first-year class. Again, we've had some questions about this in the Q&A, and they've been great. Providing context in the additional information section can be really, really helpful. Someone was asking about if it's a good place to put information about a grade drop. It absolutely is. We've gotten so many pieces of additional information that often lend context to other things that we're seeing in that application. Similarly, if you don't need to use the additional information section, totally fine. If you feel good about what you've represented in your extracurricular activities and your essay, You do not have to use the space just because it's there. My colleagues are smiling because sometimes we read additional information that is just like 85 more activities. If you feel that those are important, that's great, but really think about the quality of the things that you're putting into that additional information section, and what you really want us to know about how to read your application and what's important to know. Interviews are not just for extroverts. That is very accurate. All of us, I think, we are in this work because some of us experience moments of extroversion, but all of our campuses would be terrible if we only admitted the most extroverted people we could meet. We are looking for balanced communities. We're looking for people who contribute in so many ways. And your interview is such an incredible way for you to have a conversation with a person who represents an institution, for what you could bring to us, but also what we can bring to you. You should come to your interviews prepared to ask questions about the institution. You will be interviewing with someone who either is or has been a part of that place, either as an alum or as a staff member, such as ourselves, if our institutions offer interviews, or senior students on our campuses. So interviews are the place for you to interview the institution as well. And it's okay to go into the interview also asking that we give you that information that you need to make a good choice about whether you want to apply to our institutions. It's okay to ask real questions about the admissions and financial aid process. Our summers and falls are going to be spent answering questions either in virtual forums, in-person forums, over email, over phones. We will be answering your questions for the next, 7 months until you submit those applications in November or December. Our job is to make sure that you feel comfortable with what you're submitting to our institutions, and that anything that we can do to help you feel more secure in what you're telling us about yourself is exactly what our jobs are. You can ask us any number of things. You can ask us whatever it is that's giving you pause when you think about our institution. Or sometimes we have parents who email us. That's totally fine. We understand that parents and guardians and members of your household are also invested in this process. So if you have questions, feel free to blame them on a parent when you submit them to us. We get all kinds of inquiries inside our system. And we really want to make sure that this process feels as humane and personal as possible. And remember, you've now met 6 of us, so there is a human on the other side of that application. All of us are the ones who are traveling, if we're going back to in-person travel, to your high schools, to your neighborhoods, or one of our colleagues is. We'll be traveling virtually, we're traveling in person. As Windsor said, we're hosting a lot of fly-in programs, so if those are things that you're interested in and you come to any of our campuses, you're gonna meet us in flesh if you come to our campuses. And that is what we do in the winter. See Remy laughing. That is what we do. And in the winter, we read your application. So we are people on the other side of this application, and we're just hoping to get to know you and find reasons to say yes and support your academic and personal ability to succeed and find home on our campuses. So final slide, someone is going to offer some last few comments about the past few years, and then again, drop some questions in the Q&A, and we'll try to get them done before the next 10 minutes.
Yeah, so quickly before we get to your questions, we wanted to just acknowledge that the last couple of years have been a real challenge, not just for us on the college side, but for you going through your high school experience. And we really know that. We really understand that your high school experience has been affected by the pandemic. And, we know that your high schools and your homes and your communities have dealt with this challenge in different ways. So what we are going to be looking at is really kind of how did your community and your high school respond to the pandemic? What kinds of changes were made from the delivery method? Were you learning online? Were you in a hybrid situation? What kinds of extracurriculars were cut for a year or continued to be offered in virtual ways? And that's going to help us understand your specific context and your specific experience through the COVID-19 pandemic. We also want to just let you all know that really as a result of the pandemic, many of us went test optional and continue to be test optional. There are a few institutions that famously now are requiring standardized tests again, but the vast majority of institutions in the United States continue to remain test optional or have moved to being test free. So even if you submit an SAT or an ACT, maybe they won't look at it. The one thing we would definitely want to highlight about this is that if the institution is test optional, that truly means optional. There is no incentive for you to submit a standardized exam for the admission process. We've highlighted something about merit-based scholarships though, because when you are looking for financial aid, you may come across some institutions that offer merit-based scholarships, and sometimes those merit-based scholarships are going to be tied to SAT and ACT scores. So that's just something to be aware of, and potentially some incentive to take an SAT or an ACT if those are the kinds of institutions that are appealing to you. As we've mentioned a couple of times, we continue to offer fly-in programs. I think many of us are excited to have fly-in programs in person this fall for the first time in a couple of years. But some of us are offering some hybrid options. So, maybe we are not able to invite you to visit us on campus, but we may have some virtual programs with admission deans, things like that, which has been a really great opportunity for us to really blend, as this last point says, virtual and in-person opportunities. One of the great things I think that we've seen in the last couple of years is that institutions are offering things like interviews or even, campus tours that are happening virtually. So if you're not able to take the time or have the resources to visit us in person, you are able to engage with us online. So those are some new things that are going on in the last couple of years that we just wanted to highlight for all of you and to make you aware that we're very sensitive to the kinds of things that you and your family and your communities have been going through in the last couple of years. So at this point, we are going to move to your questions, and we've gotten some amazing questions in the Q&A box, and again, keep those coming. So I'm going to pitch some questions to my colleagues, and I'll start with one. I'm going to read verbatim, actually, from an anonymous attendee. So the question is, in terms of personal stories, would it sound bad to use my story of battling cancer? I do not know if such a story would be relevant in terms of applying to college, and I don't want to sound like a victim. Can you please give me some advice in terms of that?
I can hop in on that one. And I'm glad the question came up because this is something that we should talk about in terms of essays and personal statements. And for whoever wrote this, I'm sorry to hear that you're dealing with this. That's an incredible experience to be going through. We get this question a lot for students who are asking about their real stories and their real experiences and feeling some sort of guilt or shame or hesitation to share those because they don't want to sound like they're sort of playing the victim card. We meet a lot of admissions officers when we travel. We talk together at college fair tables, and I've never met an admissions officer who has ever thought, oh, this student totally played the victim in this essay. I've literally never heard that in the decade that I've been doing this work. Again, your story is your story, and that's what we're asking you for in this application. On the flip side, your story can be something that is personal and that you don't want to share, right? So if you decide that that's something personal for you and that you don't necessarily want to sort of walk through that with people that you've never met, you should not feel the need to share that unless it's something that you really feel comfortable with. It's not a trauma competition, but it is also not a space where we're looking to sort of judge and say, they played that card. Like if that's what you want to share with us, remember, when we talk about holistic review, we're looking at resiliency, right? We're looking at the way that you have come, through an experience like that and how the perspective that you've gained, right? And I think Jackie was talking about what sort of roommate will you be, right? Like someone who has dealt with something that is pretty tough, right? There are characteristics and qualities that are going to be amazing for us to hear about from you with a story like that.
Thanks, Remy. Yeah, your experience matters. So I appreciate that response. So another anonymous attendee asked a question, what is some general advice that you have for students like me who are likely to be taking this process a lot more independently compared to others? Because I'm a first generation student, English is not my family's first language. I know I'll be taking the lead on most of this. I'll be filling out the FAFSA and the CSS profile for my family despite knowing nothing about taxes. Is there anything I should keep in mind since I lack that kind of parent advice / support?
I could jump in here. Yeah, that sounds like it will be difficult for you to do. I will say all of our offices, I can speak for the 6 of us, I believe all of our financial aid offices, they're not there just to read your documents, they're there to be a support. So if you need help filling out the FAFSA, filling out the CSS profile, many of our financial aid offices are willing to be that resource for you. So you can call our offices and they can help you, walk you through that really difficult process. I'm not sure what is your family's native language. And so if there's a speaker from one of our financial aid offices that can also speak that language to help that barrier for you, you would not also have to translate that conversation between our offices and your parents. So that'd be one resource I would say. You can also look at YouTube videos as well. And I know there's many videos of kind of self-guide and how to fill out the FAFSA, the CSS profile, because it could be a pretty daunting task as well. So those are 2 things I would recommend.
Great, thanks, Colby. So in the last 5 minutes, we'll try to get to at least 3 more questions. So one question is, what are some topics we should avoid when writing our college essays?
I can say something here. I think you might see online, or you might see in those informational booklets and things like that, sort of typical cliche essay topics. And while there are certainly essay topics that are more common because they are common experiences, and those experiences, because they're so common, they're a little bit difficult to do well or to make personal to yourself. I wouldn't say really that there are very many topics that are fully off limits or fully to be avoided. It's less about the topic and more about the way that you write about that topic. You can make any cliche topic, I think, a good essay if it's an essay that is personal to you, that is authentic, and that is specific. I think where those sort of typical cliche essays get to be tricky is that because those experiences can be fairly common, students tend to write about them in a really general way. And so the essay starts to feel like really anyone could have written it. It's not necessarily only the student could have written that essay about their specific experience. So I think no matter the topic you choose, really try to be specific, really try to hone in on what you're trying to share, and how it can start to feel like an essay that really could only come from your perspective.
Thanks. Okay, next one is just about AP test scores. So how do we consider AP test scores compared to how we might consider SAT and ACT scores?
And hop in here to crack at this one. So first, I think what one of us said, we read holistically at our institutions, and that means every single part of the application is going to be important to us. So first of all, you're not just your SAT or your ACT, should you choose to send those our way, or just your AP scores, or your recommendations, or your college essay. But all those things give us a sense of how you're doing academically at our institution. So if you choose to send AP scores to us, they're not going to matter less or more than any other part of the application, but become another piece of that pie that gives us a sense of how you're doing academically. But we're going to look to both, certainly if you send your SATs or ACTs to us, you don't have to, of course, or your college essay or your teacher recommendations, all those pieces of the application give us a sense of how you're doing academically, not just one part. And because you all are whole students, the SAT, if you choose to take it, it's just, a few hours, one Saturday of your life. It can't possibly speak for your entire academic 4-year experience at your high school, right? And same with the AP exam that you might choose to take. That can't possibly speak for your entire academic life at the high school side. So we need all those other pieces to really understand not only your interest, your motivations, your ability to persevere when things get tough, your ability to collaborate with others, your ability to find help when you need it. All those other pieces are also what we're thinking about when we talk about academic success at our institutions, because those are all the same tools you're going to need when you get to college. You're going to need to be able to ask for help. You need to be able to find folks to collaborate with and find support. So it's just not just those numbers in the test, it's all those other pieces that come to bear to help us understand whether you might be successful at our institutions.
Thanks, Wins. Okay, last question. And while I'm having one of my amazing colleagues answer this question, I'm going to share a slide with our contact information as well that you can feel free to screenshot and reach out to us if you have any questions. As was mentioned, we are humans and we're happy to hear from you. So what do you recommend for rising seniors to do over the summer to stand out a little more? And follow up, how much does community service weigh into our applications? Can't wait to hear the response on this one, whoever wants to take it, and I will share that last slide.
I'll take this one on. Delightful. Rising seniors, keep on doing what you're doing. Some of you already have summer plans. That's amazing. Go ahead, do your programs, do your community service, do your summer camp. I know I spent my summer before senior year in the middle of the woods, no electricity at summer camp, and that was exactly what I needed to be honestly rejuvenated and refreshed to go into my senior year. And some of you, that's just what you're going to need. We are not combing through your applications to make sure that you have spent every single minute as productively as possible in the hopes of getting into college. I think that this is a good moment to remind you that getting into college is not the goal. Getting into college is a moment that happens for you before you spend the next 4 years at that school learning and growing and having a whole new life. And so don't do things in the pursuit of getting into college. If you need to spend the summer laying down on the floor in the dark, totally fine. It has been a long 2.5 years. If you want to go to academic camp, if you want to spend the summer out with your friends, if you want to take on a summer job, if you're spending the summer babysitting your siblings, all of those are perfectly valid. So you don't have to stress out, honestly, about spending your summer in pursuit of standing out to us. You are doing exactly what you need to be doing. And what we look for in your application is your ability to engage the world through a lens that we want to bring to our campuses. So do whatever honestly makes you feel good this summer. And if it's, we do have some students who, go on outdoors trips who say like, oh my gosh, I've never been kayaking and kayaking is like my new favorite thing. And they did discover that over the summer. But it's also perfectly okay to say like, this summer is not what I spent doing, and that's totally fine. Every other way that I've engaged in high school has been just as important to me as these 2 or 3 months leading up to my college application. Again, because it bears repeating, getting into college is one moment. I mean, I want to be clear, when you get into college, it's going to feel amazing. Like, I don't want to discount the moment where you realize where you're going to spend or where you can spend the next 4 years of your life. But that is just one moment. And so don't upend everything about how you do things just because it's going to change how you think that moment goes, and really think about you as a person who has human needs as a rising senior. Community service. I mean, I'm not going to be like, we don't like community service, right? But I'm going to tell you right now, not every single one of our, not every member of our incoming classes did community service. A campus full of the most intensely helpful people that you've ever met is also like not what we're trying to build, right? Community service matters to us if it matters to you. If community is a huge thing in your life, if community service is a huge thing in your life, if it has been an important part of how you engage with the world, absolutely tell us about it, right? But we understand that for others, acts of service don't have to come in the moments of community service. Service can look like cooking dinner for your family, or it can look like the trip that you have to take to school because you have a really long commute, right? Acts of service can look like being a TA in a class, if that's an experience that your high school offers, or just in general, being the kind of person that builds community around you, whether or not directly through something that's called community service and those acts. So again, if you do community service, if it feels good to you, if that is like the way that you are engaging with your community around you, absolutely do that. But be expansive in how you think about yourself and how you think about your community and how you think about service to your community. It weighs for those of you that it matters to, and for others of you, if that isn't something you've been able to do, totally fine. Think about how you relate to your community in other ways. And there you go.
Thanks so much for spending the last hour with us, and please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. Have a great rest of your day.